And you look at the numbers, and 350 civilians were killed on April 8th, 1,400 were injured in 10 minutes of airstrikes. Tens of buildings were totally destroyed, not apartments, not rooms, not people, not individuals.
Some may argue that right now, Iran is kind of doing more to protect Lebanon from Israeli attacks than the United States is.
Neither the army nor Hezbollah are willing to fall into the trap of fighting each other. Lebanon had to go to Washington because Lebanon had to affirm that it's only the Lebanese government that negotiates on behalf of Lebanon. I mean, they knew that there were Iranian-American negotiations in the making, but they didn't want to be Lebanon to be just a footnote in someone else's negotiations. Wanted to affirm the right of Lebanon to speak on its own behalf. Just 24 hours after the trilateral framework was made public, the Israelis spoke in so many words. Netanyahu, the foreign minister, the defense minister, say that we're staying in southern Lebanon, we're not withdrawing, we will destroy every village, we cut every tree. Of course, that is an indication that the Israelis don't consider themselves bound by this framework.
Hello, I'm Daniel Hilton from Middle East Eye, and today I'm joined by Dr. Tarek Mitri, Lebanon's Deputy Prime Minister. Dr. Mitri has been a minister in several Lebanese governments previously. He's also been UN Special Representative to Libya and is an expert in public policy, in Arab politics and religion. So thank you very much for joining me here today.
Pleasure to have you.
Deputy Prime Minister, Lebanon has had an unbelievably punishing few years. Since 2019, had the economic crash, the Beirut port explosion, and two devastating Israeli bombing campaigns and invasions. Today, 6% of Lebanese territory is occupied by Israel, and there are some people in Lebanon and elsewhere calling for a kind of federal system that would separate some communities from each other. Is Lebanon's unity and sovereignty under existential threat?
I wouldn't think so. All this uneasiness notwithstanding, there have always been centrifugal forces in Lebanon, but they never were able to rally a large number of people and then develop a realistic political program that might lead to what they would like to see. I think Lebanon's unity is always in the making, much to the regret of many of us. As you know, communal loyalties are at times even stronger than national loyalty. And then communal tensions, which are more latent than visible. Communal tensions create a sense of estrangement. We're becoming kind of stranger to each other. The word that you hear often in Lebanon is they don't look like us, as if difference or perceived difference is in and of itself a reason for whatever partition or federalization of Lebanon. But to cut a long story short, I don't see this happening unless we're unable to manage the present crisis and dissipate the present fears.
There's been some criticism that Lebanon is relying too much on the United States, and in particular the kind of sort of very unpredictable Trump administration, to bring stability and project like Lebanese interests in the region. Some may argue that right now, Iran is kind of doing more to protect Lebanon from Israeli attacks than the United States is. What can regional countries like Syria, like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt do to help Lebanon and create a kind of a multipolar environment in the region? And what can Lebanon do to encourage that?
There is, on the global level, there is what you may call the rise of middle powers. But in our part of the world, I think that there are there is enough interest in developing a sort of regional architecture that would be not only focused on security, but on sort of strategic alignment, if I may use the word. Now, as far as Lebanon is concerned, Syria is not just a neighbor and an ally. It's our future is sort of inextricably intertwined. Our futures, and we know that with the present regime, there is no hegemonic design over Lebanon, and there is no interest in interfering in things Lebanese. There was a rumor that the American president had asked Syrian president to intervene militarily in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and the Syrian leadership said loud and clear that this will never happen. But that doesn't mean that they're not willing to stand by Lebanon by other means, that is political, diplomatic, and then with this idea of having more of strategic coordination. What is true of our relationship with Syria is true of our relationship with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, and now with Turkey. There is an interest. Some people tend to sort of look at Turkey in again, communal terms, that is Sunni crescent to replace the Shiite crescent. Of course, the Turks dismiss this, and this is not what they're after. They see that their security, as President Erdogan said, depends also to Syria, on Syria's security, and Syria's security depends on Lebanon's. So there is this sort of intimate relation. Now, to come back to the first part of your question, it was for a long period of time, the Lebanese had the impression that there is not much attention in the U.S. as to what Lebanon faces and might face in the future. And in fact, I mean, if you read all the books that have written on U.S. foreign policy in the region, Lebanon was always a footnote in U.S. policy towards Syria, towards Iraq, towards Egypt. It was never a chapter of its own in the foreign policy book of the United States. And I think when many people in Lebanon, including some of our leaders, realized that there was a window of attention in the United States vis-à-vis Lebanon. Then they wanted to make the best use of it. And there is another simple but highly important reason why the Lebanese turn to the US is that this is the only country for the time being that has a leverage over Israel. I mean, if you want to put pressure on Israel to achieve ceasefire, to achieve withdrawal from Lebanese territory, the way the world is, the way the region is, you can't but expect the US to put some pressure. Some would think that the pressure that the US is putting on Israel is not enough, that more might come. Some would think that, quoting, J.D. Vance or others, say that the relationship between the U.S. and Israel is changing so much that it might lead to the U.S. Dealing with Israel like they deal with any other country, that this privileged, very intimate relationship of sort of mutual dependence won't survive very long. There are people who, it remains to be seen. But the main reason why the Lebanese look towards the United States is that they think a window of attention is in their favor, and that Israel, as the only country that has real leverage over Israel, can help in resolving the present difficult issues we face.
You spoke about the importance and intrinsic sort of relationship that Lebanon and Syria have, and I know that you were very crucial in creating this prisoner exchange deal with Syria, and there have been several sort of high-level delegations and meetings of Lebanese leaders to Syria, but President Joseph Aoun has still not visited Damascus, and it appears that there has not been an invitation from the presidency for Ahmed al-Shara to come to Beirut. Is there any hesitation that the Lebanese state or the Lebanese government has towards the new administration in Damascus?
I'm not sure there are any major reservations. Now, the fact that neither President Shara visited Lebanon nor our president visited Syria shouldn't be overstated, because the relationship is being built and trust has been restored after 50 years of mutual suspicion, discontent, Syrian hegemony, Syrian interference in things Lebanese. This is all changing, and it takes time for the population of both countries to realize that we're in a totally different dispensation. I have not sensed any major reason why the visits you mentioned did not take place, and I hope they will in the near future.
You mentioned the proposals repeated by Trump of Syria being involved somehow in the disarmament of Hezbollah, whether that be political pressure or perhaps even military. And that was followed by denials from the Syrian government. On Hezbollah's potential disarmament, is the party itself trying to find a solution with the government and with the state on the issue of its weapons?
Frankly, there was not much dialogue on this issue in the last few months. In times of war, dialogue becomes difficult, not just in Lebanon, anywhere else. But it's bound to happen. I mean, this is a Lebanese affair. We have stated in our ministerial program platform, we have unanimously approved that document. It speaks about restoring the monopoly of arms, to the state having the sole decision making in war and peace, that the state needs to extend its authority over Lebanese territory, all of this. So it's clearly formulated in a way that there should have been, and there were, a sort of national consensus behind it. Now, is this national consensus broken because of the war and because of these various mutual accusations? I hope not. I hope it's still possible to rediscuss those issues, but not to start from scratch. Start from where we were when this government was born.
Arguably, the government and state has hardened Hezbollah's position and alienated it from that kind of national dialogue by criminalizing its military and security operations in the country. And some believe that the government isn't doing enough outreach to the party. How do you respond to that?
You know, there, as I said, I mean, during the war that Lebanon has been dragged into, I think this was the turning point. This is a war that Lebanon did not want, did not seek, and there is a let's say majority perception. I'm not counting votes, but there are so many Lebanese who think that the 6 rockets launched by Hezbollah were an unhappy act that brought Israeli war on Lebanon, and they hold Hezbollah responsible for giving Israel a pretext to launch this military operation of destruction and displacement and killing of civilians and what have you, and so they hold Hezbollah responsible, and Hezbollah's narrative is that it would have happened anyway. We have not dragged Lebanon. We're defending Lebanon. Now, these kinds of two narratives, in conflicting narratives, have hardened positions on either side, and let's hope if we can have a ceasefire and a consolidated ceasefire, then we go back to discussions, conversations among the Lebanese within our institutions, within the government, in parliament.
Can and should the Lebanese army be relied upon to disarm Hezbollah?
No, I mean, disarming Hezbollah is not a technical question. It's not about military balance of power between the army and Hezbollah military structure. It's first and foremost political, but the army needs to be strong, need to be respected, as it extends the authority of the state over its territory. The army doesn't need to fight anybody for this, but need to be strong enough and respected enough to be in allowing the state to have its authority well established over all parts of Lebanon. It's not, again, it's not a matter of tanks and guns. It's a matter of political will and recognition that that normally a state has one army. And,
Do you agree that the Israeli government in particular is trying to sort of drive a confrontation, perhaps the sort of violent confrontation, between the Lebanese military and Hezbollah?
Possibly the Israelis would be happy if that happens, but I think the army, neither the army nor Hezbollah are willing to fall into the trap of fighting each other. This pilot zones that has been agreed upon in Washington might be the test, the litmus test for the ability of the army to move forward in extending its authority over Lebanese territory, and for Hezbollah to let this happen without provoking a military confrontation with the army.
You were a major player in the negotiations to end Israel's war on Lebanon in 2006. What differs between the negotiations then and now?
Oh, there are many differences. At that time, the Security Council was alive and active, and we went to the Security Council. This time around, the Security Council and all forms of multilateral diplomacy have been ignored, sidelined, whatever is the word. And the only broker left, I don't know if broker is the right word, but the only party that can mediate or at least allow for a mediation under its auspices to develop is the United States of America. That's a major difference. The other difference is that in 2006, the Israeli war objective was to retaliate to Hezbollah having crossed the borders and kidnapped Israeli soldiers and killed some, retaliate and hope to degrade Hezbollah. This time around, the design is much more ambitious, the Israeli design or the Israeli war objective. It looks like the Israelis, and it's not me, it's not saying this, it's every Israeli leader had affirmed time and again that there is a new sort of military doctrine in Israel that you need to reclaim deterrence, and there is no way they can reclaim deterrence unless they create security buffer zones in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in Syria. So that's a totally different ball game than in the year 2006. Therefore, reaching a cessation of hostility agreement in the form of a United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 was, after 33 days of war, was possible, and it provided us with significant measure of security and stability in the south for 17 years. Now we're in a different, in a totally different situation, more difficult, more, and I think we're left with very few options.
I mean, around 8,000 people have been killed in Lebanon since 2023, and like hundreds of thousands more have been displaced. Whole villages and towns have been erased along the border south of the Litani. To what extent can we say that this is an Israeli war on all of Lebanon and the Lebanese, and not just on Hezbollah?
Yeah, I often like to say it's a war Israeli war in Lebanon and on Lebanon at the same time. There are two ways of looking at the war, but I think successively those two frames uh, are true. When they started, they claimed, the Israelis, that they had targeted operations, almost surgical in their precision, against Hezbollah operatives and offices and ammunition depots and what have you. And then if any civilian was killed, it was sort of collateral damage. But increasingly, we saw that that many civilians, like the case of April 8 in Beirut, many civilians were killed in airstrikes that did not seem to have a specific military target. And you look at the numbers, and 350 civilians were killed on April 8, 1,400 were injured in 10 minutes of airstrikes. Tens of buildings were totally destroyed, not apartments, not rooms, not people, not individuals, but so in a way, the war started, and Lebanon was a sort of looked like a battleground between Israel and Hezbollah. But Israel has made of it also a war on Lebanon, I think. And there are many parts of Lebanon where Hezbollah had no military activity, were severely affected.
The framework agreement that has been agreed between Israel, Lebanon, and the United States has come under really heavy criticism. Critics say that it jeopardizes Lebanese sovereignty and that it does not ensure the immediate or even soon, quick return of people displaced from the south. People say that Lebanese demands, such as a full Israeli withdrawal from Lebanese territory, are conditional in a way that suits the Israelis far more than the Lebanese. Can you defend this agreement from these accusations?
We were told the framework, the trilateral framework. By the way, the word agreement is nowhere to be seen in this text. But this document was never discussed in the Council of Ministers. The Constitution, Article 52, gives the president the right to negotiate on behalf of Lebanon. But whenever you have an agreement, in the full sense of the word, you've got to bring it to the Council of Ministers. That has not happened. So we're not before a document that's binding, legally binding. This is one. We've heard the Prime Minister informally during our meetings, discuss with us the text and say that this is a framework, and therefore this is not the last word. This is the beginning of a process. It doesn't meet all the desires and aspirations of the Lebanese. Short of that is clear. But it's very clear that it doesn't. But this is a beginning. Rubio himself, Secretary Rubio, has qualified it as the beginning of a beginning. So we're not dealing with a solid, well-structured, final, binding agreement. This is one. Two, there are many, we're divided on this. And normally when a country goes into uh, into negotiations and reaches a point where of signing an agreement, you need to make sure that at the domestic level, the, although there might be disagreement, but it should not uh, exacerbate divisions, should not deepen already existing divisions. So there is more work to be done, I think, to in the next phase, and before we make a solid judgment. Lebanon had to go to Washington because Lebanon had to affirm that it's only the Lebanese government that negotiates on behalf of Lebanon. I mean, they knew that there were Iranian-American negotiations in the making, but they didn't want to be Lebanon to be just a footnote in someone else's negotiations. Wanted to affirm the right of Lebanon to speak on its own behalf. I think that's the main thing about Washington, added to what I had mentioned earlier about the window of attention that Lebanon seems to enjoy.
So, as things stand, the framework would not pass a vote within the Lebanese cabinet or the Lebanese parliament. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of work to be done before it's taken
more,
seriously, or before we can sort of think that this is something that is coming close to finality.
Yeah, and a genuine dialogue about it should take place, even if it's not the last word. Rather than continue these controversies, never-ending mutual accusations. I think it's worth being used for the sake of a sort of, if I can use the word, I don't know, cold-blooded, calm dialogue between the Lebanese, dialogue that is forward-looking, that is that looks at the end game, not just at the process. But what the complicating factor, and no one can ignore it, is that just 24 hours after the trilateral framework was made public, the Israelis spoke in so many words. Netanyahu, the foreign minister, the defense minister, say that we're staying in southern Lebanon, we're not withdrawing, we will destroy every village, we'll cut every tree. Of course, that is an indication that the Israelis don't consider themselves bound by this framework, at least bound by it to affirm their willingness to withdraw. And I think this continues to be the fundamental objective of Lebanon. Lebanon wants Israeli withdrawal, return of the displaced population, the return of the prisoners, and Israel doesn't seem to sort of open itself up to this possibility.
So you've been involved in setting up a committee to document Israeli war crimes in Lebanon, which then I suspect could be taken to international courts. However, the framework has been accused of ensuring that Israel will never face justice for the crimes it has committed in Lebanon. Is this true?
Look, I chair a committee that exists since 2010. It's an officially established by the government. It's a National Commission on International Humanitarian Law. And we do a lot of work other than documenting war crimes. Now, since the war broke, we're into documenting war crimes. And we continue, and we share the fruits of our labor. We share our report I went to even after the framework was made public, I went to Geneva, shared with the Human Rights Council the findings of our report and left copies to various member states. There is the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights had sent a mission to Lebanon, which is into a highly technical team that works towards establishing a sort of verified report according to their standards, to the international standards about violations of international humanitarian law. All of this is happening, continues to happen. It cannot be stopped by this Article 13 of the framework. But Lebanon has not decided, the government of Lebanon had not decided to go to any international court. And for a variety of reasons, Lebanon is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, neither is Israel. So there is a provision in Article 12 that allows ICC to have competence in investigating in Lebanon for a short period of time. The government and on all sides of the political spectrum, unfortunately, were not willing to do that. So there was nothing in process as far as taking Israel to an international court. What was in process is documenting international violations of international humanitarian law, and that will continue. And then Lebanese citizens, private citizens, who want to take Israel to courts in countries where courts have international jurisdiction, universal jurisdiction, then they can benefit from our work. But we also, on top of that, we have been told that although the word cessation is used in this Article 13, we were told that it only means suspension, that normally during negotiations, this has happened in South Africa, this has happened in Algeria, during negotiation, if you are engaged in a judiciary process, you suspend it for a while. So again, I mean, the things are opened, and we continue our work.
Dr. Mitri, thank you so much.
Thank you.